On the morning of March 13th, 2019, a 911 call came into dispatch in Grand Rapids, Michigan. The caller's voice was low, shaky, and urgent. "He already killed my auntie. Can you please hurry up?"
911 emergency. Hello? Okay, where are you located? I'm sorry, ma'am, I can't hear you. Are you able to tell me where you're located? Are you at a...
553 Sheldon Avenue Southeast, please hurry now.
Okay, I got Sheldon. What's the number?
553, hurry, please hurry up.
553 Sheldon. Okay, can you tell me what's going on there?
You just hurry up, please. I'm gonna die. You're trying to kill me. You already killed my auntie. You need to hurry up, please.
Okay, ma'am, I'll start the police that way. Can you tell me what your name is?
Keyona.
Who's the person who's causing trouble there?
Please hurry up. You got to kill me. Please hurry up.
The voice belonged to 25-year-old Keyona Griffin. She was inside the house with the killer. She had just witnessed the execution-style murder of her aunt, Joletta Baber Bay. She knew she was next. She gave the warning. And then, silence. Police arrived 7 minutes later. They knocked on the door. No one answered. They left. Inside, Keyona was still alive, bleeding, hiding, waiting for help that never came. Hours later, her brother would discover both bodies. Keyona was shot multiple times, including a bullet to the face. Her aunt, Joletta, had been killed at close range while listening to music through her headphones. The suspect, 45-year-old Daryl Demon Brown, was gone. He was Joletta's boyfriend, a man with a history of violence and a fugitive status in another state. He had moved into the house just weeks prior. Police recovered a gun box and ammo, but no suspect. Daryl Brown vanished without a trace. This story is not just about a double homicide. It's about a missed opportunity to save a life. It's about a woman who spoke up, asked for help, and was ignored. It's about a system that responded too late. The 911 call still circulates online, chilling and unanswered. The suspect remains free. The family continues to grieve with no closure.
Person of interest in the murders of two women in March in Grand Rapids could be in Columbus, Ohio. Police there shared these photos of Daryl Brown, originally shared by Grand Rapids police several months ago. He is considered armed and dangerous. Joletta Baber Bay and Keyona Griffin were shot and killed on March 13th. Police say all three of them lived inside a home on Sheldon Avenue Southeast, and Brown was dating Baber Bay before she was killed. Back in May, police believed Brown may have been in Atlanta, Georgia.
This is the story of Keyona Griffin, a voice on a call, a name on a report, and a question that won't go away. Why did anyone get there in time? This documentary examines everything that went wrong, start to finish. Stay with us as we unravel this shocking story and uncover the heartbreaking details of what led to this senseless loss. If you enjoy real crime stories that uncover the truth, don't forget to subscribe. Your support helps us share real cases, spread awareness, and give a voice to those who can't speak for themselves. Before we begin, let us know in the comments, where are you watching from, and what are your thoughts as the story unfolds? Welcome to True Crime Tales, where we reveal the crimes that shock communities and the secrets hidden behind closed doors. These are real people, real events, real consequences. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what's coming next. Now, let's begin. Keyona Griffin was 25 years old at the time of her death. She lived in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and was known by family and friends as a bright and expressive young woman. She had no criminal history or any known associations with illegal activity. Keyona maintained a close relationship with her aunt, Joletta Baber Bay. According to multiple family sources, she often spent extended periods at her aunt's home on Sheldon Street, SE. This living arrangement was informal but consistent, and it allowed both women to support one another emotionally and logistically. Keyona's presence in the home was regular and welcomed. She was not considered a guest, but rather a trusted family member. In the months leading up to the tragedy, Keyona's behavior remained stable, but her level of concern about her environment particularly about her aunt's new partner, began to grow. Charlotta Baber Bay was 47 years old when she was murdered. She had worked for years at the Grand Rapids Public Library, where she was described by co-workers as soft-spoken, reserved, and spiritually grounded. She did not engage in confrontations and kept a small, tight circle of personal relationships. Charlotta owned the home where the crime took place. The house had been in her name and was well maintained. Family members say she had been private about her romantic relationships, rarely bringing any partners into the family fold. That changed in the months before her death, when she began seeing a man known as Jay, later identified as Daryl Demon Brown. She did not openly disclose the relationship's depth to her family. Despite the secrecy, Charlotta eventually allowed Brown to move into her home. Daryl Demon Brown began living in Charlotta's home several months before the double homicide occurred. He introduced himself to the family and neighbors as Jay. According to multiple sources, his presence in the household was sudden and unexplained. Brown did not appear to have a job or contribute financially to the household, yet he quickly assumed a permanent role in the home. There is no public record indicating that Charlotta performed a background check or shared any detailed information about Brown's history with her family. At the time of the incident, Brown had an active warrant in another state for failing to register as a sex offender. He also had a documented history of domestic violence. His criminal record included multiple charges involving harassment, physical assault, and resisting law enforcement. This information, however, was not widely known within the Baber Bay family, as Charlotta kept the details of their relationship tightly guarded. Over time, Brown's presence in the home grew more dominant. He was reported to have developed routines in the house and was present at nearly all hours. There were no records of domestic calls or disturbances filed by neighbors during this period, but several family members and visitors expressed discomfort with his demeanor. They described him as controlling, intense, and emotionally unpredictable. Keyona Griffin became increasingly concerned about Brown's behavior inside the home. Though there are no recorded statements by Keyona indicating physical violence, she allegedly told close friends and relatives that she felt unsafe around him. This concern was never formally reported to law enforcement or support services. Keyona's observations were largely dismissed by others in the household, possibly due to Brown's quiet demeanor around outsiders. In hindsight, family members describe her warnings as subtle but consistent. She was said to have noticed Charlotta withdrawing from routine family communication and distancing herself emotionally. Charlotta's change in behavior was also noted by family and coworkers. She stopped attending church events, limited her phone conversations, and rarely left the house. These behavioral shifts were reported to have coincided with Brown's increasing control in the home. Neighbors began to notice fewer visitors, and the household became quiet and insular. Brown's interactions with the local community were minimal. He did not appear to have long-term employment or social ties in Grand Rapids. Those who met him casually described him as distant and guarded. The signs of escalating control, isolation, and emotional withdrawal within the home were not identified or acted upon by any authority figure prior to murders. Despite growing tension inside the household, there were no formal interventions. No friends or family requested a welfare check, and no neighbor reported suspicious behavior. This silence would prove fatal. On the morning of March 13, 2019, at approximately 10:25 a.m., a 911 emergency call was placed from a residence located at 553 Sheldon Avenue Southeast in Grand Rapids, Michigan. The caller was Keyona Griffin, a 25-year-old woman residing in a home with her aunt, Charlotta Baber Bay, and Charlotta's boyfriend, Daryl Demon Brown. In the audio recording of the call, Keyona is heard speaking in a controlled but clearly distressed voice. She tells the dispatcher, "He already killed my auntie. Can you please hurry up?" Though she does not identify the perpetrator by name, her statement clearly suggests the killer is a male familiar to her. She implies that he is still in the home and poses an imminent threat. Despite her emotional state, Keyona remains coherent and attempts to convey the urgency of the situation. She does not appear hysterical, which may have influenced the dispatcher's perception of the emergency. The dispatcher reassures her that officers are en route and instructs her to stay on the line. However, The call abruptly ends after less than 2 minutes, leaving emergency personnel with limited real-time context. Approximately 7 minutes after the initial 911 call, officers from the Grand Rapids Police Department arrive at the residence. According to the official police log, they approach the front door and knock multiple times. There are no visible signs of forced entry, no shouting or other outward indications of distress from within the home. They do not hear a response from inside, and they do not observe anything that legally justifies forcing entry without a warrant. Consequently, they leave the scene after remaining at the door for just over 3 minutes. No perimeter is established, and no additional checks are made around the property. This decision to leave the scene would later become a central point of controversy and criticism. At that moment, Keyona Griffin was still alive inside the house and had already alerted dispatch that someone had been killed. Over 2 hours later, a second 911 call is placed, this time by Keyona's brother, who arrived at the residence around 12:38 p.m. According to the transcript, he forced his way into the home after receiving no answer at the door. Upon entry, he discovered the bodies of both Keyona Griffin and Charlotta Baber-Bay. He immediately contacts emergency services to report the scene. Responding officers return the home and officially declare it a double homicide. The home is sealed and a full forensic investigation is initiated. The initial officer's failure to enter the home during the first response becomes part of an internal departmental review. Inside the residence, 47-year-old Charlotta Baber-Bay is found deceased in her bedroom. She is lying on her bed with headphones on and a bullet wound to the back of her head. The nature of the wound and the scene suggests that she was ambushed, possibly while listening to music or watching something on a device. There are no indications of a struggle, no overturned furniture, no visible defensive wounds, and no signs of forced resistance. This points to a targeted and calculated shooting carried out from close range. It is likely she never saw the shooter approach, and she was killed almost instantly. In another room of the house, Keyona Griffin is found deceased on the floor, partially covered by blankets. Forensic assessment reveals she suffered multiple gunshot wounds, including a fatal shot to the face. Her body's positioning suggests an attempt to hide or protect herself after the initial 911 call. Blood evidence and bullet trajectory analysis support the theory that she was alive and mobile after placing the call and tried to evade the assailant by moving to a different room. Keyona's death appears to have occurred shortly after a call ended, likely within minutes. There are no weapons found near her and no sign that she posed any threat to the shooter. The search of the home yields critical evidence linking the killings to Daryl Demon Brown, the live-in boyfriend of Charlotta Baber-Bay. Investigators recover a high-point handgun box with the serial number label removed, a box of spent 9mm ammunition, consistent with the caliber used in the shootings. Personal items belonging to Brown, including clothing and identification documents, are missing from home, indicating he fled in a hurry. No firearm is recovered at the scene. Authorities immediately begin efforts to locate Brown. His name is entered into state and federal databases, and a warrant for his arrest is issued. His vehicle is found abandoned shortly after, but no fingerprints or DNA provide immediate leads to his location. Daryl Demon Brown is the man identified as the prime suspect in the March 13, 2019 double homicide of Keyona Griffin and her aunt Charlotta Baber-Bay in Grand Rapids, Michigan. At the time of the murder, Brown was 45 years old. He was known by the nickname Jay among close acquaintances and within the Baber-Bay household. Brown had a documented criminal history long before this case. Public records show that he had been previously convicted of domestic violence offenses in Ohio. His criminal profile also included violations related to sexual offenses, and at one point, a warrant was issued for his arrest due to his failure to register as a sex offender, an act required by law in several states to track individuals with prior convictions involving sexual misconduct. These charges, combined with the sudden disappearance following the murders, position Brown as a dangerous individual with an extensive history of violence and noncompliance with law enforcement obligations. Despite this history, Brown had been living openly in Grand Rapids at the time. He had moved into Charlotta Baber-Bay's home several months prior to the incident. The relationship between him and Charlotta appeared serious to outside observers, But family members later revealed that Chiletta kept the relationship largely private and that Brown was not well known to the rest of the family before the murders took place. Brown's last confirmed appearance was at the Baber Bay residence shortly before the murders occurred. He was believed to have been inside the house when Keyona Griffin made her now infamous 911 call around 10:25 a.m., reporting that her aunt had already been shot and that she, too, was in danger. Following the double homicide, Brown fled the scene. According to investigators, his personal belongings had been removed from the home. Law enforcement determined that he likely left within a short time window following the killings. He abandoned the vehicle shortly thereafter. The vehicle was later recovered and processed by forensic teams, but no publicly disclosed forensic evidence, such as DNA, fingerprints, or items of value, has led to his arrest. Since that day in 2019, Brown has managed to evade law enforcement. He has not used known aliases in official documents or been apprehended despite being entered into multiple federal criminal databases. The absence of digital footprints, such as social media activity, employment records, or financial transactions, suggests calculated steps to remain hidden. Due to the nature of the crime and the high risk Brown poses to public safety, the U.S. Marshals became involved in the case. In 2022, Daryl Demon Brown was officially added to the U.S. Marshals' 15 Most Wanted Fugitives list, which includes individuals considered particularly violent, elusive, or high-profile. His addition to this list elevated the visibility of the case on a national level. Along with the public listing, a $25,000 reward was announced for any information leading directly to his capture. Despite this incentive and the national distribution of wanted posters, press releases, and media coverage, no credible tips have materialized that have led to Brown's arrest. Law enforcement has urged members of the public, especially those in southern regions of the United States where Brown may have fled, to report any sightings or information. However, as of 2025, Daryl Demon Brown remains a fugitive. The aftermath of the murders generated widespread public attention, not only because of the violent nature of the crime, but because of the failure in law enforcement's response to Keyona Griffin's 911 call. On the day of the murder, Keyona placed a call to emergency services clearly stating that her aunt had already been killed and that she was about to be murdered. Police responded to the call approximately 7 minutes later, but failed to make contact. They knocked, received no answer, saw no signs of forced entry, and ultimately left the scene. Less than 2 hours later, a second call was made, this time by Keyona's brother, who entered the home himself and discovered both victims deceased. The timeline and the response triggered significant backlash. Many questioned why officers did not force entry given the content of the emergency call. The outrage grew as the audio of Keyona's 911 call was released to the public. Her voice, pleading for help, became a focal point of criticism toward local law enforcement. A campaign quickly developed across social media under the hashtag Justice for Keyona. The campaign included activists, true crime followers, and community members demanding accountability for the response delay. Multiple vigils and memorials were held in Grand Rapids in Keyona and Chiletta's memory. The public sentiment reflected frustration not just with the crime, but with the institutional failures that may have contributed to the loss of life. Several months after the double homicide, tragedy struck the same family again. The very house where Keyona and Chiletta were killed became the site of another fatal incident. In July 2020, the home caught fire under suspicious circumstances. Inside the house during the fire were Keyona's grandmother and her 8-year-old cousin. Both died from smoke inhalation. Investigators ruled the deaths accidental, but the exact cause of the fire was never fully disclosed to the public. The incident further deepened the sense of loss within the family and raised questions about the safety and history of property. Following the fire, the house was condemned by city officials. Due to the crime history and subsequent deaths, the home was eventually demolished. The land where the house once stood remains vacant, serving as a grim reminder of the violent chain of events. The murders and the failed 911 response also raised issues of accountability within the Grand Rapids Police Department. Legal experts, community organizers, and family members questioned whether police procedures have been followed properly and whether biases or oversight contributed to the failure to enter the home and intervene. While there was public discussion about potential lawsuits against the department, no formal legal action from the family has been publicly documented. Discussions around departmental reform were initiated by advocacy groups, but according to records, no officers were disciplined, and no major procedural changes were enacted in response to the incident. The absence of corrective measures has sustained criticism and concern from the public. Many observers argue that the events surrounding Keyona's call could serve as a catalyst for changes in how emergency calls are assessed and responded to, particularly when the caller's life is clearly in danger. Following the discovery of the bodies, all attention turned to one individual, Daryl Demon Brown, also known as J. Brown, who had been living in the house and dating Chuleta, disappeared immediately after the killings. Investigators found his personal items missing and discovered evidence linking him to the crime. Among the items found was a high-point handgun box and matching ammunition. Despite the strength of the evidence and a clear timeline indicating his presence during the murders, Brown has never been arrested. Law enforcement quickly identified Brown as the primary suspect and issued warrants for his arrest. The U.S. Marshal Service elevated the case to national attention by adding Brown to its 15 most wanted fugitives list. A reward of $25,000 was offered for any information leading to his capture. Despite the federal spotlight, Daryl Brown remains at large. Authorities believe he may be hiding in the southern United States, particularly in areas where he has known ties. He is considered highly dangerous. Investigators have also cited concerns about his mental stability. Prior to the murders, Brown had a record that included failure to register as a sex offender and past allegations of domestic abuse. These details paint a disturbing portrait of a man capable of violence and skilled in avoiding law enforcement. Brown's continued evasion has led to significant criticism of the investigative efforts. Questions have arisen about how a suspect with such a profile, under national surveillance, could remain free for more than half a decade. Each year that passes without an arrest widens the gap between the crime and closure for the victims' families. As of 2025, no credible sightings or leads have surfaced. The case has grown cold, and the initial media coverage has gradually faded from the public eye. Still, the impact remains. Keyona's 911 call continues to circulate online, shared in documentaries, podcasts, and YouTube true crime channels. The haunting nature of her final words and the knowledge that her plea for help went unheeded has fueled outrage and sympathy nationwide. Law enforcement has faced widespread criticism for its initial handling of the situation. Officers arrived at the scene promptly after Keyona's call, but because the door was locked and there were no visible signs of forced entry or disturbance, they left within minutes. Keyona was still alive at that point. The delay between the first and second emergency calls allowed the killer to escape and ultimately led to one of the most glaring missed opportunities in recent true crime history. In the years since the murder, family members of Keyona and Chuleta have continued to demand answers. They've spoken publicly about their frustration, anger, and grief. They've appealed to the public for help in locating Brown and pushed for more attention from national media. Some family members have also questioned whether systemic failures, especially regarding domestic violence cases and vulnerable women of color, played a role in how the case was handled. The community has also felt the ripple effects. In July 2020, tragedy struck again when a fire broke out in the same house where the murders occurred. Keyona's grandmother and 8-year-old cousin died from smoke inhalation, while the fire was ruled accidental. The coincidence was hard to ignore. For the surviving family members, the house became a symbol of repeated trauma, and it was eventually condemned. Today, the case of Keyona Griffin and Chuleta Bay remains open, but stagnant. No one has been charged. No new evidence has emerged. And the man believed to have pulled the trigger continues to live free. At this point in the story, the unanswered questions begin to surface. Questions that need to be considered not only for justice in this case, but also prevent similar failures in the future. Should police be required to force entry if a 911 call implies murder? In Keyona's case, the police knocked and left. Had they forced entry, could she have been saved? Should policies change to allow or require immediate entry during life-threatening emergency calls? Even when doors are locked, could Keyona's life have been saved with a different police response? If officers had remained at the scene longer or conducted a more thorough investigation upon arrival, could they have intervened in time? Should there be a nationwide standard for response to suspected homicides in progress? Why hasn't the U.S. Marshal's reward led to any credible tips? Despite the $25,000 reward and Brown's inclusion on the 15 most wanted list, no leads have developed. What does this say about the effectiveness of reward systems in high-profile fugitive cases? Do domestic violence backgrounds receive enough scrutiny in law enforcement? Darrell Brown had a known criminal past, including failure to register as a sex offender. Should law enforcement place higher monitoring priorities on individuals with a record of domestic violence, especially when they begin new relationships? How can families protect themselves from predators who use charm to manipulate and isolate? Charlotta was described as reserved and spiritual. Darrell's sudden presence in her home seemed unusual to those who knew her. What signs should families look for? What preventive actions can be taken before isolation turns into violence? The story of Keyona Griffin is more than just an unresolved double homicide. It's a reflection of what can happen when systems fail and a killer is allowed to vanish into thin air. As the years pass, the silence surrounding this case grows louder, but the questions remain. And until they are answered, justice for Keyona and Charlotta remains incomplete. If you have any information about Darrell Demon Brown's whereabouts, contact the U.S. Marshals or local authorities. Your tip could finally bring this cold case to a close. If you found this story as gripping and heartbreaking as we did, don't forget to like this video and share it with others. And if you want to hear more true crime stories that uncover the mysteries behind these tragic events, make sure to subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell. You won't want to miss our latest stories, updates, and discussions. Thank you for joining us on this journey to seek justice and explore the truth. Together, we can make a difference. Until next time, stay safe and stay aware.